was so blessed to recently go to the trip that we made to Charleston for the day a week ago Saturday. It was a wonderful time, enjoyed the trip, but I had one thing that happened that really touched me deeply, an experience. And the experience was with an old 400 to 500 year tree, the angel tree that's in Charleston. How many of you have seen that tree? It's an experience. You know, I used to see pictures of the Grand Canyon and I thought it was beautiful, but when I stood on the edge of the Grand Canyon, it was overwhelming. So sometimes pictures just don't do what actually experiencing something and feeling the energy of it, the life of it, the story to it. And that tree began to speak to me about all of the story that it held within it. We really don't know how old the tree is. Our guide told us it could be much older than 400 or 500 years old. But this is the tree that I'm talking about right here. And it's supposed to be moving. It's quite a tree. It's not moving. There we go. This is the angel tree. It's me. Look at that thing. I had two feelings with this tree, one of grief and sadness for the story that it held concerning the story of slavery and the history of Charleston holds about this time of America's history and life. But at the second time, I felt the feeling of endurance, how this tree has survived and is strong, and how that we will endure. I know that we have many challenges still in America. We're still dealing with a lot of deep issues that have been suppressed at times but keeps emerging because we have not put the axe at the root of the tree of good and knowledge, that we still hold old stories deep within us that need to be cleared out. And this is what we'll be dealing with in the pain body issues: racial pain, national pain, individual pain, all these pain and our story that we can release and put in new parts of the story. So the tree represented those two things for me. It was a tree that held a lot of the story of a very dark time in our history, but at the same time how it endured through it and has become strong and keeps its roots deep. And this is what spoke to my heart. Trees are considered sacred in many cultures. When I decided to do this, which is a little off for me, I thought, why do I want to talk about trees? Who wants to hear about trees? The more I got into this, the more amazing it was. Now, I've always been fascinated with trees. I remember a neighbor had an old willow tree next door, and I used to lay under there. It was where I could get away from everything, was go lay under that willow tree. And many times under that willow tree was some of the first questions that popped into my mind that started me as a person of search. I wanted to search these answers of what it's all about. What is life? And who knows, maybe that tree was a part of helping me to understand these parts of me that is going to be a part of the quest and the search of my life begin under that tree. I've always been fascinated to watch trees when storms and winds blow, and how that they can go with the wind. Those who don't are snapped off the branches, but those who are willing to go with the wind of change are those that continue to survive. So it speaks a lot to us. Watching their cycles of growth, shedding of leaves and reflowering in the spring, people have long perceived trees as a powerful symbol of life, death, and renewal. Trees look like us. People have a trunk, trees have a trunk. We have arms, Trees have arms and branches. So we feel intimately and innately deep connection to them. Many people say they can feel a tree's vibration and energy, and I'm sure a lot of you have been called a tree hugger. That's a compliment. When placing their hands upon its bark or sitting and putting their back to the tree, many people have said that they felt that energy and the vibration of the tree. We naturally feel peace and serenity when walking in the shade of trees on a forest trail. Even here in Charlotte, there's beautiful places where the trees have overgrown the avenues and the streets, that it's absolutely a wonderful experience to drive down those places as the trees are hugging you and covering you. You feel covered. You feel like somebody's got your back, so to speak. A recent study shows that trees remove so much pollution from the air that they prevented 850 human deaths and 670,000 cases of acute respiratory system in 2010 alone. Trees save our lives. Trees are considered sacred in virtually every place where humans have settled, a sign of deep relationship between people and trees. There are many profound beliefs surrounding trees that people have held for millennia. Here are some of the interesting, touching examples. Buddhists have a deep reverence for the Bodhi tree, a type of fig tree with heart-shaped leaves, beneath which Buddha is said to have meditated for 49 days, trying to reconcile his mind to the fact that there was suffering in the world. On the 49th day, he stood and thanked the tree, providing shade for him, and in that instant he attained enlightenment. Today, in the same location where Buddha is believed to have sat, there grows a descent of the same Bodhi tree. Buddhist myths say that the tree will live there until the world is destroyed as we know it, and the place where it grows will be the last place to be destroyed, and when the world is reborn, this site will be the first place to appear. Back in the early 70s, I was introduced to a very interesting subject that was very much outside of the perimeters of my Christian thinking at that time, pastoring a little fundamentalist church in East Texas, near Paris, Texas, and Cunningham, Texas. Pretty much there was based upon only Bible and scriptures. But I had read about something that was found in the center of the human brain, a little gland about 1/4 of an inch called the pineal gland. Now, I didn't know how to say pineal. I said the pineal gland. And a woman got up and walked out because she thought I was saying something else. And she was very holy and sanctified. I was not going to sit there and hear such language in church. But it's called the pineal gland because it's shaped similar to a pine cone. And it's in the center of the human brain. And the thing that got me in the article that I read is that how for many decades, even centuries, that it had gone completely inactive, but was being reactive starting somewhere in the 60s. Yeah, in the time of revelation and revolution, something was awakening. The pineal gland of women, gays, African Americans, I'm going to bend. African Americans and all other repressed part of our culture, that people begin to rise up because something was being activated in them. And that little pineal gland was like an antenna. And all of a sudden they said it was beginning to vibrate and be reactivated. And something deep within me, not in my head, but somewhere in the wisdom of my heart said, this is a very important thing that is happening that's going to change the collective consciousness of humanity. You need to know about this. And I mentioned it in one of my Sunday meetings, the pineal gland. And of course, the first thing that I was asked is, give me scripture, chapter and verse. I said, well, I don't think it's in there, the word pineal gland, in any way. And of course, they were shut down to it completely. The next week I was kind of praying and meditating about how can I, in some way, kind of bring this out to these people in a way they could understand. It was the only platform I had at that time, was ministering in this little church. And all of a sudden something said, look up every cone-bearing tree of the Old Testament. Now, talk about epiphany in the class today. About epiphany is a thought that you would have never had. I would have never had that thought. And you know, some of these things are very boring when you read. Have you ever read things in the Bible like, oh, I don't need to know about this, you know, like who beget, who beget, who beget. A lot of begetting going on in the Bible. People just begetting everywhere. You know. And you get into those Chronicles and all of that, and it's boring, like, what does this have to do with me? But behind all of it is an essence of truth for all of us if we're willing to become spiritually guided, metaphysically driven. Behind the symbols, there are deep codes of issues that do have to do with us. It takes us out of history into mystery. And the mystery is in you. And the mystery of God is in all of us to be awakened. So anyway, I started looking up the fir tree, the box tree, every tree. There's all kinds of trees I found in the Old Testament that were mentioned. And I started looking them up in my Strong's Concordance in the Hebrew, and I began to look the Hebrew into the English, and I began to get the definition of the pineal gland. A way to see differently, a way to consider all of the things that we talk about that is intuition, guidance, enlightenment, third eye, all those things that I didn't have a language for in 1976. We got a language for it. I didn't have a language for it back in those days. But actually, it was the awakening of our eye of enlightenment is the pineal gland. They're the same kind of molecules that make up the cones of your eyes is in the pineal gland. When it's activated, you will see yourself different and others differently. You'll see the world differently. You won't see it through the perceptions of illusion and appearance and cultural condition and all the conditionings of the world, but you'll see the heart of the matter. Okay, here I go. I got to get back to trees. Got to get back to trees. Trees. Yeah, trees. We have more in common than you can imagine with trees. Scientists begin to echo that indigenous people, tree huggers, shamans, and spiritual teachers have been saying this for a long time. It's not New Age. What a misnomer to call most of what we're teaching New Age. It's been forgotten and it's new to us. But this stuff is old all the way back to Egypt, all the way back to Atlantis and beyond, even beyond our planet, for you that have ears to hear me. You get it, don't you? Plants have the ability to detect gravity, light, magnetic fields, pathogens, and more. The importance of our planet, life, trees, is called the lungs of the planet, the Amazon forest. Now, this is what it used to be. Not long ago, this is what it is. All of this is gone. Now, this is before the fire in Brazil of the Amazon that's burning as we speak probably. But we are losing very quickly the lungs of our planet. As the world's largest rainforest, the Amazon plays a crucial role in keeping our planet carbon dioxide levels in check. When you breathe in the oxygen, you breathe out the carbon dioxide. That's toxic poison that has to go out. And the trees take that from you, the poison that you exhale, and through photosynthesis changes it back to oxygen you can breathe again. Somebody said, well, this comes from God. Yes, God in the tree. Somebody said, oh, you tree worshipers, you're not worshiping God. Where do you think God is? God said, man's going to make matter, and I'm going to incarnate it so we can redeem it and restore it. God is in nature. It is the intelligence of nature itself. Trees communicate. There's a slide here of how the roots of trees are continuously communicating to all the other trees at all times through electromagnetic language. Isn't that amazing? A recent Hungarian, Finnish, Austria study showed us that trees also need their rest, with the circadian rhythm being measured by the drooping of leaves overnight, seen as a form of tree sleep. Humans, animals, and plants share some digestive similarities. Just as food quality and choices affect the human digestive system and well-being, so too does the soil health affect the health of a plant. Both humans and plant life have an intergenerational exchange of knowledge. The knowledge that is exchanged between trees can be viewed akin to the regenerational passing on of mythology, language, or family stories, tribal information, or spiritual teachings. So the offspring of trees carry the story of their parent tree. And the story goes on and on. What I'm saying to you, we need to learn to listen to the tree, because the tree gives us the ancient story. It doesn't give us the story of certain segments. It gives us the story of humanity on this planet. All that it has been through, where it's come from, where it can change and correct itself, where it can moving on to its destiny. We all know that human beings have auras, and so does plants. This is the auric field of a mushroom. It is a mushroom. Plants have auric fields. Now, this is an organic mushroom. You that don't want to spend that little bit extra for organic, I hope this will change that. And you'll realize that when you eat organic food, even if you're a meat eater, try to find grass-fed meat that has not been dramatized, commercialized. He's so cute, I have to say hi. That took me out. But see the difference in the aura is so different than that of non-organic or commercially grown in any way. Native Americans understood trees very well. The Cherokee called trees the standing people and teach that all their plant relations are the givers of the earth, providing the needs for others. The wood from trees was used for the Native American to create sacred items such as talking sticks and prayer sticks. The choice of a tree and the wood used to make these sacred objects was highly symbolic and had meaning and reverence to the craftsman. I have for you as a pass out today as you leave a chart on Native American interpretations of different trees and their spiritual application and what they mean to us on a human level. One is an oak tree. We have oak trees here. This was an oak tree. The angel tree that you saw in Charleston is an oak tree. The oak tree has always fascinated people because the great oak comes to the smallest of an acorn. To think of that small acorn holds the DNA of that huge tree you just saw. It shows you that small seeds of possibility can grow into huge manifestations of your life. It's not always in the big thing. You know, spirituality is not Hollywood. You know, it's not burning bushes. It's not things coming down and lightning coming out of the sky and all kinds of things. It moves in the subtleness of ourselves sometimes. It just starts out as a seed. I'm going to close today with a few things out of the Bible, because the Bible was very fascinating. First thing that I noticed was Daniel 4, the king was Nebuchadnezzar. Nebuchadnezzar was having a dream that bothered him, and he brought all of his soothsayers, and he brought the astrologists, and he brought all the people of the court in to try to interpret this dream, but no one was able to do it. So he sent for a young man called Daniel. How many's heard of Daniel? Daniel in the lion's den. Daniel was a seer, and he began to develop the understanding of this tree, and he began to take it apart, and he began to tell him about what the leaves meant in each part of the tree. And in the dream, though the tree was hewn down, it was cut down, but the roots of it would grow again. But the statement that Daniel made, that I'm going to bring up without getting into all of this, is, the tree is you, O king. It is you. And he was getting ready to go through a time in which they were going to render him and take his power away. But he was telling him, you will come back again. So this story of the tree tells you, if things are kind of pressing down on you a little bit, you're going through a rough time, and it seems like you're on the downhill a little bit, hold on, because your roots go down deep, and you will flourish again and again, as long as you need to do it. In Mark 8:24, Jesus was talking to a man who was blind, and he wanted to help him to heal. And he spat upon his eye. Now that's a horrible thing in the West. I would not suggest you do that. But in the East, it was a part of an idiom that the firstborn son of a family had magical virtue of healing in the spit of the firstborn son. So it was a midrash. It was a way in which of teaching that I am the firstborn of God. I am the firstborn Christ, the Son of God. But that's not good Western stuff, so I would not suggest doing that. And the man begins his process of self-healing, and the first thing he says, he looked up and said, I see people as trees. As trees. In Psalms 14, trees praise God. In Psalms 96, trees rejoice. In Psalms 55:12, trees clap their hands. In Job 14, there's a hope in a tree, although cut down, will sprout again. Through the scent of water, it will bud. Water is always a symbol of spirit. Where the spirit is, you shall flourish. And as long as we keep the spirit here, and we became spirit-led and heart-driven, we will flourish as a community. We can't help it. We can't help it. It's important. So important. Revelation 2 says, trees are for the healing of the nations. The 12 fruits of the trees along the river of life will be for the healing of nations. That's why there's a return to herbs and more natural ways. And some of the old ways of using herbs and things that your grandma and them used is coming back in. They knew what they were talking about. In many cases. In the Quran, even. 17:17, God has raised you up from the earth as a tree. So it doesn't matter where you go in any spiritual written literature or school of thought, there's the mention of trees with people, with human beings. So Psalms 1:3, and I love this one of all, God said, we're a tree planted by living water. Our leaves shall not wither, our roots go down deep, and all that we do, God will prosper. So remember who you are today. Your roots go down deep. And when the storms of life come, just bend with it, go with it, and know the storm will pass. And the sun will shine again upon your life and upon your hearts.